This video is a review of sections 7.1 to 7.3. Please make sure that you are taking notes just as you would in class by working out all of the examples that I do in the video. So first in section 7.1 we covered how to write percents as fractions, and what you need to remember in this case is that you want to put it over 100. And what I mean by that is you're going to write 32 over 100, because remember that percent is a number out of 100. So if it's 32%, that means it'd be 32 out of 100. But we always have to make sure that our fraction is reduced or in simplest form. So 32 and 100, they're both divisible by 2 since they're even, but they are also both divisible by 4. And you can start with 2, it just means you're going to have to reduce an additional time. But 32, 4 goes into 32 8 times, and 4 goes into 125 times. And that is simplest form. So 32% is equivalent to 8/25. Number 2, we have a fraction, 16.5%, but we still want to put it over 100. So I'm going to write 16.5 over 100. And remember, we can't have fractions or decimals in our fraction. That's not simplest form. So the first thing I'm going to do is write this as a decimal, and I'm going to change the 16.5 to 16.5. Those are equivalent. And we talked about doing a few things here. When it's 0.5, there is a number that we can multiply to get rid of that half. Or we talked about anytime there's a decimal, you can always just multiply by 10, and that moves the decimal place one spot to the right. Either way, it's going to give you the same answer. I'm going to go ahead and just multiply by 10 since that's what we talked about most often, which moves the decimal one spot over to the right and gives me 165 over. Remember, you also multiply by the bottom by 10, and that gives me 1,000. Now I need to start reducing. 165 and 1,000 end in a 5 and a 0, so I know that both numbers are divisible by 5. And if I punch this into a calculator, 165 divided by 5 is 33. And 1,000 divided by 5, some of you should know this one, is 200. The only numbers that go into 33 are 3 and 11. So you would want to check if 200 is divisible by 3 or 11. And it is not. So 33 over 200 is equivalent to 16.5%. If you'd like to pause the video and try 3 and 4 on your own, and then check your work with my solution, that would be awesome. So again, number 3, we're going to put it over 100, 0.7 over 100. We have a decimal, we need to move it one place to the right. That's the same as multiplying by 10. Remember, we need to do it to the top and to the bottom. So that gives us 7 over 1,000, 100 times 10. And 7 is prime. If you want to check on a calculator, if 7 divides into 1,000, you would punch in 1,000 divided by 7, and you'll see that it does not. So this is our reduced answer, 7 over 1,000. Finally, for example 4, we have 150%, and again, we're going to write that over 100. Remember, it doesn't matter if the number is bigger than 100 or smaller than 1, we're always going to put it over 100. We need to reduce this. I know they both end in 0, which means that they're divisible by 10. So that gives me 15 over 10. Remember, it's like 150 divided by 10, and you take 100 and divide it by 10, you'll get 15 over 10. And now they end in 5 and 0, so they're both divisible by 5. And that gives us 3 halves, or 3 over 2. So 150% is equivalent to 3 over 2 in a fraction. The next type of example that we looked at, we're going the other way. We're looking at fractions and changing them to percents. So remember, in this case, what we want to do is we want to make the bottom of that fraction equal to 100. So you have to ask yourself, what can I multiply 4 by to get 100? And if you're not sure, you can check on a calculator. You can do 100 divided by 4, and that will give you the answer. So what we're going to do here is multiply the 4 by 25, because that will give us 100 on the bottom. Remember, we also need to do that on top. So you can use a calculator if you need. 7 times 25 is 175. Now from here I noticed in a lot of the homework from this section that several of you then would start reducing this fraction, but that's not what you want to do because you'll actually end up problem 7/4. We want to figure out now that we have 175 out of 100, what is that as a percent? 175%. Remember, take a percent and put it over 100. So if we have a number over 100, that is the percent. Let's take a look at number 6. We want, again, to make the bottom. So what do we multiply 5 by? If you're unsure, 100 and divide it by 5. That'll give you 20, or 5 times 20 is 100. We need to do that to the top and the bottom. So we get 40 over 100. 2 times 20 is 40. And that's the same as 4%. Now number 7 was a type of problem we actually didn't discuss yet. We'll talk about those soon in proportions, but some of them percent, and it's 66.6 repeating percent. And I'll show you at a later date. 100. So you can go ahead and skip 7. Again, several repeating percent. The other two types of problems we discussed were writing percents as decimals and writing decimals as percents. And this is a simple moving of the decimal place. So when you want to write a percent as a decimal, you need to move the decimal places 2 spots to the left, and that gives us 0 point, and you do a filler 0 here, 0.19. So 1.9% as a decimal is 19 thousandths, or 0.019. Number 9, we have 32%. Remember the decimal is back here behind the number, so we move it 2 places to the left, and we get 0.32, or 32 hundredths. Remember, I do want you to write that leading 0. So when you're going the other way, we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So 0.0083 as a percent would be 0.83%. And don't forget, when I'm asking you for a percent, I do need the percent symbol. Number 11, we move it 2 places to the right. We put our filler 0 in, so we get 50%. 0.5 is the same as 50%. And finally, from section 7.2, we're going to write fractions as percents now. Remember, we want to round to the nearest tenth, and I have a hint here to get your calculator, because first we need to put it into a decimal. Sometimes we know what these decimals are, other times we don't know what the decimal is. 3/8 is not a real common one. I don't expect you to know what that is. You could tip and divide, which is the long way to solve this problem, or in your calculator you do 3 divided by 8, and that gives you 0.375. So 3/8 in a decimal is 0.375, but we need to find it in a percent. So now we do what we did on the previous slide. You move it 2 places to the right, 7.5%, and that is rounded to the nearest tenth. Number 13, I probably don't expect anyone to know what 19/17 is in a decimal. If you punch it into your calculator, you'll see that it's non-terminating and non-repeating, so we get 1.11764706 before my calculator runs out of room. Remember, I talked about this in class. The first thing you want to do is move the decimal, so that gives us 111.7647, and I'm going to stop there because I only need to go to the tenths. So I need to round to this place, which means I have to look at the 6. It's 5 or greater, which is going to cause me to round that first 7 up to an 8. So we get 111.8%. Next, from section 7.3, we talked about the percent proportion. And I'm going to write the percent proportion up here. We had part over whole equals percent over 100. And remember, the trickiest part here is making sure we get our pieces in the right spot. The word that's associated with part is, and the word associated with whole is of. So if you can find those two numbers, then you can hopefully easily plug them into the proportion. There will always be one unknown, and that's where we put our variable. So 14 says that 14 is what percent of 35? So you can see here we don't know the percent. So we're going to have x in the percent place. And now we need to figure out which number is the part and which number is the whole. 14 is with the is, so it's 14, and it's out of 35. There's the word of, so we know that's our whole. And we want to cross multiply, so we get 1400, 14 times 100 equals 35x. We solve for x by dividing both sides by 35. So you want a calculator. 1400 divided by 35 is 40. So x equals 40. And remember, again, we want to find the percent, so make sure you put your percent symbol there. Basically, what this means is that 14 out of 35 would be a 40%. Again, the percent proportion. Now we want to know what number is 27.5% of 400. Well, the tip here is that 27.5 is the percent, so that needs to go in the percent spot, and we always put it over 100. Now we want to know what number is, so it's the part that we don't know. There's the word of, that's indicating that 400 is our, and now we want to cross multiply, so we get 100x equals, if you take 27.5 times 400, that gives us 11,000. Divide both sides by 100. And some of you recognized in class that you can just knock off zeros. That's the same as dividing by 100. If you knock off 2 from the top and 2 from the bottom, then we get 110. So x equals 110. And if I asked you what that meant in relation to the problem, it would mean that 110 is 27.5% of 400. And I believe this is the last example. We have 62 is 80% of what number? And hopefully you can see that the of what number here, that's the whole. So that means where the whole goes, that's our variable. We have 100 on the bottom right. 80 is the percent. So 62 goes in the other spot. That's our part. We want to know what number 62 is 80% of. So when you cross multiply, we get 6,200 or 6,200 equals 80x. We divide both sides by 80. Stick 6,200 or 6,200 divided by 80. And we get that x equals 77.5 or 77.5. So 80% of 77.5 would be 62. So that's the end of the video lesson. Please make sure you have these notes completed for class tomorrow, as we'll use these as a quick review for the quiz.